I can see it's just hit 7 o'clock, so we'll get started on this webinar tonight. Just because we've got a lot to cover and we want to make sure we've got some time for Q&A at the end. So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for February's topic. This topic this month is permitted developments, what you can build without planning permissions. This is always a popular topic. So I'm Sarah from Refresh Renovations. I'm joined tonight with Sam and Ali. They're our experts here in London, and they're going to be able to present this topic to you, but then also do Q&A at the end. So it's 30 minutes, so we aim to finish around that 7:30 time. And what we're going to cover in this next 30 minutes is what does PD really mean in 2026? The importance of permitted developments in London. We're going to look at conversions, loft conversions, side and rear extensions, retrofitting, so internal reconfigurations, risk areas and mistakes. We're going to leave you with 3 key takeaways, and then as I say, there's Q&A at the end, so some time to ask our experts some specific questions. So I'm going to hand over to you, Sam. I think you're going to kick us off. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sarah, and good evening, everybody. I hope you'll find tonight's session beneficial, and I look forward to the Q&A session to address any specific questions that might arise, as mentioned by Sarah. So I'll start off by defining permitted development. Permitted development rights are derived from a general permitted development order that was granted by the government and not the local authority, which allows a householder to perform certain types of work without needing to apply for planning permission. For reference, the full rules are set out in the government guide. That would be fine on the website. We've got an excerpt there on the slide. Further to that, permitted development rights are split into 8 classes from A to H with separate rules for each class. However, keep in mind that we will be talking about those in the slides to come in terms of how these classes relate to the common project types. So you can think of permitted development as a fast-track tool to legally expand your home while saving time and cost. Now, where does PD not apply? Permitted development in general does not apply within designated areas. These designated areas are comprised of conservation areas, the areas under Article 4 directions, which is the case in many London boroughs, listed buildings, and most flats or leasehold apartments. Some examples specific to London boroughs with tight controls would include Kensington and Chelsea, Islington, and Richmond upon Thames. So it's always good to check where your property lies within the map of the local borough and to ensure basically what the status is of that property. When it comes to taking the permitted development route, although it is not strictly required, it is recommended to obtain a lawful development certificate. What is that certificate? It's an official document from your local council proving that your proposed build is legitimate and in line with the rules of permitted development, effectively certifying that it does not require planning permission. Now, one might ask, what's the point of submitting for a lawful development certificate if the whole point from going through that route is to avoid waiting and going through the hassle of securing planning permission? And I would say this would have to do with risk tolerance, because without a lawful development certificate, you'd be running the risk of non-compliance with the PD rules, such as the misinterpretation of the rules by the architect or designer that could push the design proposal too far. 2, it could be the absence of compliant design input and council verification, which would mean effectively relying solely on the competence of the contractor or builder to correctly interpret the rules in implementation as they build the project. And 3rd would be that the rules of the permitted development could change down the line. Therefore, there are real benefits that come with securing that certificate, such as proving to future buyers through this documentation and their keen-eyed solicitors that everything was carried out well above board, and that in itself deprives them of a negotiation point or a reason to walk away from the purchase. In a case whereby the rules do change over time, it proves compliance at the time of issue and prevents council enforcement. Last but not least, when dealing with difficult neighbours who aren't happy with the completely lawful works that you intend to carry out, and that work, for example, requires a party wall agreement, this certificate could help clear ambiguity and mitigate any hindrance that would impact the project, whether it has to do with timeline or the cost. What are the expectations for 2026 in terms of permitted development? That will be in line with what we saw in 2025 last year. In addition to that, we're going to be expecting that the levels of scrutiny of permitted development proposals will increase within the local boroughs. Number two would be the increased usage of Article 4 directions across London, which has become a prominent feature of the city's planning landscape, which is driven by local authorities seeking to protect residential character from uncontrolled permitted development activities. The third would be that permitted development rights are increasingly being linked to energy efficiency, with the government using them to encourage retrofitting and renewable energy adoption to meet net zero targets. Therefore, local boroughs are also placing more emphasis on sustainability and retrofits. So which are the common project types that are usually undertaken under the umbrella of permitted development? We'll start by the most common, which is loft conversions. Lofts are often the quickest way to add bedrooms or office space under permitted development in London. And they are, at times or in certain cases, preferred over extensions because of the reduced amount of structural work that needs to take place on the foundations, which makes it a bit more efficient in terms of a project timeline and potentially costs as well. So permitted development limits the volume for lofts to 40 cubic meters for terraced homes and 50 cubic meters for semi-detached or detached homes. In terms of location of the loft, the front roof extensions are generally not allowed beyond the existing roof slope, especially where they overlook the highway or a main street. And the materials should match the existing roof and building style. So on average, what we see is under the permitted development loft conversions, they can add between 25 to 30% usable space to your home. What would be the common loft mistakes that we see? And many of these mistakes can be attributed to a very basic feat of sometimes overlooking the guidance or misinterpreting it. And the main ones here are exceeding the cubic volume limits, which we just mentioned. That depends on the type of the property. Erasing the ridge height, and that's a very common problem across London. It is essential that it is kept within within its current standing, basically within the rest of the terrace if it's a terraced house. Ignoring party wall agreements that results in disputes and at times halts work on site, and overlooking issues such as privacy and overlooking through windows and glazing elements at high level, whether it's at loft or to the side, which can basically impinge on the privacy of the neighbors. So in terms of an example of for a loft conversion, we've just looked at what the rules were for permitted development to be able to build a loft within these rights. This project was for a semi-detached house in Tooting on Rogers Road. This is a photo of how it used to be, and this was it after construction. We'll be focusing here on the loft element of it. So the scope was altering the roof from what it currently was over there to a hip to gable. So that would give us the space for a staircase, and then adding a rear dormer that would allow for, in total, 2 bedrooms and 1 shared shower room at that level. And these here are photos after the works were completed. The top one shows the rear dormer, almost full width. The small window here is for that shower room, and the larger window is for the bedroom. And there's another bedroom on the front side with the sloped roof. To reiterate, that was carried out under permitted development. No full planning application was needed. Moving on to rear extensions. Rear extensions are normally the go-to solution to efficiently expand kitchens, dining, and living areas. The key permitted development rules for rear extensions in terms of the structure, it should be a single story. The depth would be 3 meters for terraced and semi-detached and 4 meters for detached. The maximum height of that extension cannot exceed 4 meters. If that extension is within 2 meters of a boundary, the eaves themselves must not exceed 3 meters. I appreciate this is technical, but these are usually the metrics which make or break that type of proposal under permitted development. It's noteworthy to add that the larger home extension scheme, which was introduced permanently in 2020, allows for a single story extension of up to 8 meters for detached properties or 6 meters for semi-detached and terraced properties without full planning permission, provided they are under 4 meters high and utilize prior approval to consult the neighbors. And here we're providing basically a case study. This one is located in Bromley. Again, another semi-detached house that shows here within the axonometric view the existing state of the property. That was its boundary. And that is the view of the proposed. So 3 meters from the existing boundary, and then a part rear extension on the first floor to enlarge the bathroom that would run in parallel with the neighbor, so that doesn't basically affect the rights to light. And in addition to that, part of the scope was a front porch. All of that did not require planning permission. That is the image from site before the work took place. And that was an initial design feature based on the brief, which was then, as you will see, reduced to separate elements of glazing, because bespoke glazing usually costs a lot, and they wanted to control spending on that part of the project. So here we see the existing floor plan and the proposed. That's the new extension within that dashed area, which turned basically the existing and then the new extended space into an open plan kitchen, living, dining. And these are some photos from that new space, and that's from the top floor bathroom. And then looking at side extensions and wraparound extensions, the key rules for side extensions in terms of height, again, they would have a maximum height of 4 meters, and if within 2 meters of a boundary, the eaves should not exceed 3 meters. So largely similar to the rear extension, but the difference lies within the width of the side extension, as it cannot exceed 50% of the width of the original house. That's when it's measured as at its widest point. And it would also have to be limited to a single story. Now, multiple connected extensions in terms of side and rear can be permitted development compliant if each part meets the rules individually, and that can be a bit of a daunting activity with the council, as they are scrutinized heavily by London boroughs. The combination of side and rear, otherwise known as a wraparound, if they do exceed 50% of the total width of the original house, they are likely to be refused. And over the last few years, and especially after the pandemic, we've seen a remarkable increase in demand for outbuildings, which are typically proposed for a home office or gym or multi-purpose space. The key permitted development criteria for these outbuildings would be, first and foremost, the purpose. It must be for domestic, incidental use, whether it's going to be a shed, a greenhouse, a garage, or a home gym. It cannot be located in front of the principal elevation, which would be the front wall of the house. And in terms of height restrictions, it should have a maximum overall height of 4 meters for a dual pitched roof, or 3 meters for any other type roof. And again, if it's within 2 meters of a boundary, its maximum height would be capped at 2.5 meters. When it comes to outbuildings, in terms of size limitations, the total area of all outbuildings must not exceed 50% of the total land around the original house. So that's considering the plot as a whole. And again, it must be a single-story structure. On another note here, if there is anyone in attendance today considering a basement or lower groundwork, it is worth mentioning that PD rarely covers major basement excavations in London, and it is highly likely that this would need to go through a full planning application. Now, just to get some relevance from the slide, this is an ongoing project in Streatham, SW16, Avenue Road, whereby in addition to the outbuilding, we're working on maximizing space on the property through a loft conversion and area extension as shown in the proposed axonometric view, including the focus on the outbuilding. The outbuilding is proposed to be a multifunctional space that is of incidental use to the main house. That is a visual reference for what it could look like after completion, and that is a picture of it currently under construction, focusing on large elements of glazing to allow for an abundance of natural light. So to wrap it up, basically, in terms of all elements that have to do with extending, it usually does surface as a surprise for many to see how much they can actually build under PD. So how much can you actually build? And we're using this past project. So this is a volumetric diagram from past project with all the colored aspects or highlighted aspects being part of the scope, all of which were done under permitted development on a detached house, which in itself is on a sizable plot. So there wasn't a need for planning application. The rear and side extensions were built under Class A of PD. That's the parts highlighted in blue. The roof extensions, including dormers and gable ends, were built under Class B of permitted development. Chimney removal and addition of flush roof lights, as shown in red and orange, were carried out under Class C. And finally, the landscaping changes were completed under Class F. So, as I said, it is an example of a detached property that's on a sizable plot of land, and the limitations that would be imposed will depend on the specifics of any given property. So that will be its size and what is being proposed. And I will be handing over to my colleague Ali to talk to us more about the internal renovations bit under PD and more. Over to you, Ali.
Thank you very much, Sam. I appreciate that. Welcome to the participants once again. I'm Ali Irtaza, and I cover West London for Refresh Renovations. So permitted development also extends to the internal side of the house. And what's important to mention over here is that if you are making those internal changes, even when you're using PD, you must still comply with building regulations for most of the structural changes. So that's quite an important part. And we will be taking you through an example of a project we have undertaken. You can see how that impacts the overall available space that the customers can get. Next slide. Now, this is a kitchen renovation in Ealing, 37, and the customer had an old type of galley kitchen and the dining room next to the kitchen. So they were looking for a wall between the kitchen and the dining room, and then renovate the entire ground floor. Also, the house had chimney breasts, which were taking up a lot of space. So the plan was to remove the chimney breast as well as the internal wall and then come up with a new plan. What's important here in this project is that the customer had a certain plan for where the new kitchen should go. But where Refresh Renovations could add value was based on our experience of working with several other kitchen projects. We could advise them based on how we felt the space could be even better utilized, and that allowed them to attain phenomenal change and transformation. So on your left-hand side, you would see the existing layout of the house, where the kitchen was towards the right-hand side, and with a door to get to enter into the garden. And the reception room on the left-hand side is where the chimney breast was that was going to be removed. On the right-hand side is the proposed layout. Initially, the customer wanted to have a U-shaped kitchen in the existing place where the old kitchen was, and use the left-hand side as just open kitchen and dining. However, in our consultation with them, they had told us that storage was a challenge for them, and they were looking to maximize the storage options. So we gave them the idea that perhaps if they could use the left-hand side as a kitchen placement and have an L-shaped kitchen, that would allow them to have even a small island plus a lot more space for storage. They liked the idea, they went ahead with it, and the next few photographs would show you the worst options. Next slide, please. So this, you can see the chimney breast that's been removed, the internal wall that has been taken out. There was also a larder at the rear which was demolished and taken out. Next slide. On the top left-hand side, you can see the new window that has gone in where the old door was, and the places where the changes were made, walls have been plastered. They wanted new flooring. Now this is a suspended floor, and it didn't have adequate insulation, so we recommended them to insulate the floor before they put on new flooring. As you will see over here, it's a beautiful herringbone finish, and the insulation really helped to improve the quality of living in this room. Next slide, please.
Ali, can I just interrupt? Can I just a few of the attendees are just saying that it's difficult to hear you. Are you able to keep the mic maybe a bit closer, or maybe remove your earpiece just to make that quality a bit better?
Okay, I'll try and maybe it's the microphone which might
Thank
improve.
you.
So I'll just move a little bit closer to all microphones. So you will see on the top two photographs, on the left-hand side is the old kitchen, the old dining area. And on the right-hand side, you can see the wall removed with the new kitchen gone in. And on the lower right-hand side is another image of the similar. But this really opened up the room, and the customer really felt that if they had gone for the U-shaped kitchen, it wouldn't have given them the impact they were looking for. Next slide, please. Okay, so I think we've heard a lot about the permitted development options, but is this the best option always available to customers? I think we have to really understand what we are trying to achieve with the project. It's important to understand that PD comes with lots of restrictions, and as Sam explained earlier, there are restrictions to the height, to the depth, to the materials, to the glazing. So ultimately, a full planning allows better proportions, especially natural light and layout optimization. So it's important to know that these are permanent changes to the house, and ultimately this impacts the value of the property as well. So if you have an option to sell the property at some point, then clearly the buyers, potential buyers, would value that quality of design a lot more on rather than whether the project was done on the PD or not. And it's important to keep that in mind, that full planning does give you the full access to the ultimate design that you might have in mind. So with that in mind, PD is an excellent option. However, you have to see whether your project, is this the best option for your project? Next slide, please. And what are the key areas where we see potentially people getting into trouble when using PD? Not every property has PD rights, especially flats, and there are lots of flats in London. So that's important to know. Also, the flats typically are leasehold. So PD, you cannot ignore the leasehold and freeholder consents when you're trying to plan a project. Similarly, it can overlook Article 4 restrictions. There could be neighbor disputes. And also, PD is a fast-track process, but it does not mean that the cost of construction is less. So it is very easy to underestimate the build cost just thinking that the project is being undertaken through permitted development. Next slide. Now, when Refresh works with clients, we typically take our customers through these 5 steps. Of course, starting with an initial consultation on site, where we can understand their vision and then get a grasp of what they're trying to achieve. The next step is typically to create a scope of work and give them an estimated range of costs so that they can understand whether the project and their budget are aligned or not. If this step is fine, then the next step is to undertake the detailed planning and costing stage. And this is where a planning permission stage would also come in. However, at this stage, we take our customers through material selection so we can come to a stage where a final and fixed price can be agreed for the project. And then a build contract is signed and it's taken before the construction was undertaken. And finally, the project is completed and all the necessary documentation provided to the customers. So this is a typical home renovation journey, but a structured 5-step process that Refresh Renovation always adheres to when working with customers. Next slide. To sum up the discussion today, what are the key takeaways? The permitted development is a useful tool, but it's highly regulated. You really need to see whether this aligns with your project. Lofts under permitted development are considered a quick way to add usable space, and as Sam mentioned earlier, it adds value back to the property. And you also get about 25-30% of usable space, especially bedroom space. That's highly needed in projects in how they've been done. And finally, the 5 steps that I showed to you, whether you're dealing with a project and a permitted development or planning application, it's important that the process is followed. This will allow you to keep control over the costs and time of the project. The documentation, the design, drawings, specifications, they're all critical. And the most important piece in all of that is project management, which will allow to keep the costs under control and keep the project delivered. Thank you very much. Tara, can I get this back to you?
Thank you, gents. You did very well there. It's just almost half an hour, and that was a lot of content to cover. So thanks so much and really informative. We do have a few questions in the chat, so I'm just going to ask those, and then if Sam or Ali, if you're happy just to jump in and answer those, that would be helpful. So the first question I have is there an online system where you can research non-A4 area cities?
I would ask Amana to please clarify or elaborate on this question just so that our answer can be directed at what she wants to figure out. It's not very clear to me.
Hi, Sam. Yeah, so what I'm asking is, you know, like you said, there's Article 4, which is a hindrance to PD rights.
Yes.
So as opposed to, for someone who's interested in the national geographical location in terms of investment, I was thinking, as opposed to going through every single council mandate, for a better word, is there a better way that you could sort of scrutinize quickly and find out where the Article 4 areas are? So then you know that's obviously it's not going to be compliant with PD.
Yes, definitely. There are a few online platforms, but I'm trying to think of one that is comprehensive and covers all, because all the ones I've been on and seen and used have been specific to certain regions or certain areas. So I think if you have maybe London as a whole in general as a target area, or if you have any other area in mind, if you can share that with me, and I will direct you towards basically these mapping portals, because over, I think, the last year or two, there were a lot that have been developed, and they are continuously being improved to cover not just areas within an Article 4 directive, but all sorts of different designations, especially when it has to do with the boroughs and the local authorities.
Great. So, sorry, you carry on. I was going to say you've got some more questions. So if you carry on, that would be great.
I don't know if that was a question to me or not in reflection to my first question, but the areas I'm already considering are Article 4, sadly, but I was thinking sort of you mentioned mapping portals. Do you have anything? I mean, is there one particular mapping portal that you could use, or maybe is an inbuilt feature that you could utilize to sort of establish where the non-Article 4 areas are?
Yes, there is, but I don't know it off the top of my head, so it's something I need to send you, if you like,
Okay.
via email, so that you can have reference to it.
Okay. Shall I throw my email address on here?
You can, if you want, send it directly, based on the invitation that you've received for this webinar, if you don't want to share it on this public space, or if
I'll
you want to
send it.
leave it here, it's fine.
Yeah, I'll send it on here directly message to you then, Sam.
Okay, brilliant.
All right. Thank you.
And Mana, you also had some additional questions. Do you want to continue those with Sam?
Yeah, so the next question was, I did read about a year ago that there was the big hype about PD rights being doubled. So that was it 15,000 square feet or 15,000 square meters, and it was going to become 30,000. And where you had the side extension and the wraps, you'd get the double amount if it was a semi or a terraced or a detached property. Is that actually gone through then? Is that gone through the consultation, or is that still sort of up in the air?
So that has gone through, and it's the part I mentioned, which has been enforced since 2020, and that's the larger
Mhm.
extensions scheme. So this can go through the permitted development route, but it would need an additional layer of prior approval on that.
Okay.
So in which they would consult the neighbors, for rights to light and other factors that
Okay, no,
would.
it wasn't 2020. It was more recent than that. I remember when it happened on the 1st of August 2020. But it was definitely more recent, most definitely like a year, maybe 18 months ago. And it was also relevant to the commercial to resi. Because I remember looking at back then maximum 15 square feet of office space, and when that hype came through that it was going to be doubled, I thought, oh, that's amazing because that removes the limitation and restriction of looking for office class C for PD rights spaces. But I've never heard, and I've been looking on gov.uk and other planning portals, and I can't find anything that's become concrete. But there was in the news about the sort of the limitations being doubled in terms
Mm.
of Class C as well, for 15,000 to become 30,000 square feet.
I see. I'm not entirely sure on that one, which you referred to as that hype in the media, but it would be definitely something um, to look into and see if that's something that's actually been enforced or something that's been misinterpreted and
Okay.
put out there as a promise.
Okay. What's my next question?
Um,
Okay, yeah. So where you've got a residential property and you talk about PD and you get 56 days, what's that, 8 weeks? But then let's say you want to build a double story as part of the single story extension under PD. So the double story then becomes full planning, assuming you go full planning, not outline. But then can you submit that as one application? As you know that within the limitations of PD, you've got PD rights there standing, but then
yeah.
can you submit one application with obviously with your drawings in mind, with the full with the double story extension as well, or do you have to physically submit two separate applications for it to be quantified separately as 56 days rule and full planning to go through all the consultation process?
I personally would advise the latter because you don't want to combine elements that are permitted with elements that need further consideration by the council, so that if
Okay.
basically the decision comes back negative, you
Mm.
don't have to repeat. So what you can do is submit the applications on let's say, on a piecemeal strategy. So deal with everything that has to do with permitted development separately, and then put in whatever requires full planning as a separate application, which would sort of decomplicate the process, especially with the planning officer considering the application.
Okay, yeah, makes sense actually now. Thank you. Last question, I think, is I know you touched on it, an outbuilding, it shouldn't exceed 50% of the main property. And was that to say it's only then if it's not exceeding 50%, it's only then considered under PDR? And the reason I picked up on that is because I remember thinking of doing I think it was 5 by 8, so 40 square meters annex outbuilding for a better word, and it was going to be like a vertical commas a gym to satisfy the needs that there is a requirement of the gym and it can't there's not sufficient space in the main house. However, I was informed by no names mentioned by the planning officer that you do require full planning as opposed to it falling under PDR. If it falls under PDR, that's amazing news. Can you please clarify that?
That's where the calculation takes precedence, because you need the calculation needs to factor in the land, the total area of the land, basically around the property, how much or what's the area or the footprint of the outbuilding that's being imposed, and then based on that you can make the classification, and that's what the council is going to be judging by. Therefore, if your area exceeds what is allowed under PD and you do submit a PD, they're going to come back and say your application is invalid, or it cannot be validated. It has to go through a full planning permission if it does exceed that area. So this is where I would refer to the actual calculation. And it's something that needs to be looked into on a case-by-case basis, because it's easy to get basically misled on that sense, especially when it comes to the calculation of the area of a specific plot of land or property.
Okay, so you could sort of, I mean, in terms of for that particular project in mind, that it wasn't questionable in terms of the plot of land size. It was very much realistically evident that there was, but he was like evident. He was very much adamant to sort of submit the full planning based on it was definitely for sure less than 50%. And in the boundary, the rear of the property, subjectively, there was enough space on all three sides, sort of the back and the left and the right, at least 1.5 meters space before,
It could
against the
have been.
boundary.
It could have been a risk assessment and a strategy based on that on the part of the party that's done that. Because they'd say better safe than sorry, because
Yeah.
if they do submit it and it's not within permitted development rights, as I said, it will be invalidated, so then they'd have to submit another application. So perhaps they thought we'd submit it all
Okay.
under a full planning application. This way it will be considered whatever happens.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you for raising your questions. I think my colleague Mohammed has responded to Paul. There is so the differences between an end of terrace house and a semi-detached house in regard to PD, there will be similarities, but this is I think where the size of the plot will come into play, because for example, a lot of end of terrace houses have a smaller plot than a semi-detached house, and vice versa. So that would be dependent on the plot itself. Issues related to rights to light and restrictive covenants, they basically would supersede PD if there is a detrimental impact on your neighbors in that case. So again, this would be on a case-by-case basis. And then if an extension has permitted development, can a neighbor enforce that it is built to building regulations? For instance, there could be a spread of fire issue. Definitely, because any sort of project that goes to site that has to do with structural work, whether it's an extension, whether it's a loft conversion, building control needs to be involved. Now, whether building control is public or private, so whether building control is through the council or if they hire a private building control inspectorate, that has to be the case if they want to make sure that there is compliance with building regulations.
Can you hear me? Yes. No, but yes, I see what you mean. It's not quite as straight, but you're talking to a chartered building surveyor, so
Yeah.
I deal with this. I always say to my clients, even if you get PD, and normally I'm doing valuation work, to be honest, it's
That's hard work. No, I do expect witness it. And I always say you will almost certainly need building regs. As soon as you touch that chimney breast, get building reg. And I also mentioned party wall things. So it would be a prerequisite, surely, that you do it complies fully with all the other regulations that are obtained at the time, would it not?
A
Would that
hundred,
is
a
is
hundred
that
percent.
is that enshrined in the documentation so the public know? Because a lot of public, to be honest, they think they've got planning and home and dry. Well, they may know about building regs, and then I've seen so many jobs that clearly doesn't comply with the building regs, or sometimes I would say it's been passed by building control, and I'm saying no. I'm afraid as a surveyor, I'm not happy with that fire separation or something. So, but so there are issues. Yeah, well, we know about Grenfell, don't we? But yeah,
Exactly. That's
yeah,
unfortunate.
it
These are shortcomings on the part of
yeah. I mean,
enforcement, basically.
do they? Is it joined up government? It's gone out of vogue, that phrase. So you get this. You're right. You need to get it in writing at the time it was submitted. I mean, the building regs are changing all the time, as you know.
Hmm.
That is that there's a warning. You must get all the other things in, all the ducks in a row before you embark on the job to make sure the building stands up and you don't cause a nuisance to your neighbours. Is it in? I haven't dealt with PD very much, but I'm obviously aware of it, and I've got general ideas. And your talk's been excellent because it's refreshed me. I didn't realize about the classes so much. But does it sort of underline it that the builder, that not the builder, sorry, the owner, if you like, we're talking about the domestic market, is encouraged to do that, or more than encouraged? Is it, or you've got PD, you're home and dry, because there are rogue builders out there who don't get proper building regs. I'm trying to eliminate all the naff built buildings I have to look at. I mean, is it pretty well underlined? You must do that so they actually know, because a lot of people are very. It's a bit of a mystique, I think. Is the wording? Is it a standard wording they get that so, or is it just whatever the council want to say?
So I would take it a step back and say,
Yeah,
even during planning or going through,
yeah,
let's say, submission for a lawful
yeah,
development certificate. So they're asking us for designs, proposed designs. Recently, after
yeah.
the miserable events of Grenfell Tower,
God.
they've enforced the inclusion of a fire safety strategy to every
Well,
single proposal that we send into the
building
council for
safety.
revision.
I'm aware of the Building Safety Act, and we're not talking high rise. Obviously, 3 stories.
No, even for
Yeah. Oh
smaller
no. Yeah.
developments, they're asking for a fire
Uh,
safety strategy. And
yeah.
then before you get to site, it is basically a rule of thumb to
Yeah.
share your proposed plans, including the structural input, if the project takes structural input, with building control. Again, whether that's private
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, or
Yeah.
public, so that they can basically take their time to review it and then give you that 5-day notice period before you can commence construction on site. So that is the element, I think, which
Yeah.
sometimes is not enforced on site due to people cutting corners
I see
and,
it all the
and
time.
saving time and money.
It keeps me busy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but actually, we should not be built. I mean, we want things done once and done properly. So yeah, I'm sure you do that. I just this is really good actually that you've got the Q&A, because it's a very lonely job. Are you? I'm just trying to get Refresh Renovations. Are you architects, or what? What's your back? Not you particularly, your company. What do you do? Uh,
So
yeah.
Refresh Renovations basically serves as a design and build contractor from start to finish.
Right.
I'd give you an example from my
Yeah.
office. We are based in Southwest London. We cover
Yeah.
that
I
area
covered
as well.
that.
Within our office, there's
Yeah.
architects, there's project managers, there's
Yeah.
designers.
Right.
So yeah, that really depends on the setup. But the key from this process is that each relevant profession will be basically consulted when it needs to be to take out the input that's required from them, so
Yeah.
that all the boxes are ticked before construction starts
Right.
and maintained during construction, so that you can issue all the relevant certifications post
Yeah.
construction, so that people can have all the documentation on hand to maintain or basically improve their resale value later on. Because as you know, as a surveyor, when the time comes for sale,
I've had last minute ones. It's just to go back to exchange, and oh no, you haven't got, and they have to do it retrospectively, which is, and it has to be to the modern day standards, which sometimes is impossible.
And then they have to issue indemnity insurances and this and that.
And then just says, what about this? I say, keep your paperwork, get it signed off with a completion certificate or certificate of completion. I always say that, and I don't know whether people listen to my advice, but yeah, it saves an awful lot. Do it by the book. But there was one question. I won't detain you too long because I'm sure you've got other people. But
go ahead.
My question of this 50%. Let's talk about, it's a detached house, so no query. Supposing it had been extended before the 47 Act, because there was hardly any. There was some building control, back to the Great Fire of London. But is there a sort of time beyond which it may have had a back addition added on or something like that? So you can't go on in infinite ad infinitum, can you? You can't keep adding 50%. No. So there's once you've done that, then you have to go down the line of getting permission once you've used that 50%. So what is the rule if it was extended? I don't know, you had a Victorian house, it was extended in the 20s or something, would that count or not? I mean, if you could tell, probably not, there wouldn't be much of a record about. Well, it might be model building regs or something. I don't know what.
So again, depending on what's being proposed, if it's an outbuilding, then all existing outbuildings would have to be calculated and including the proposed on top of that. So it really depends on the proposed. If we have something specific to work with, then we can then potentially give you accurate advice rather than speculating at the moment.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah, you're a specialist. Yes, but you could have a garage. Once you've got a building there, you can often knock it down. You're not taking up any more ground space. So yeah, you could replace it with, say, habitable space as opposed to, say, a garage or something. I think.
Correct.
Yeah, so
that
it's quite complicated, isn't it? Yes,
that is very common nowadays. We're getting a lot of inquiries where people just want to basically knock down that derelict garage with an asbestos roof or shed, whatever it is, and turn it into a home office. So all of these are straightforward going through.
And that will be classed as permitted, even if you're making. Yes. I think there may be covenants that when the whole development gets planning, because you see people leave the doors, behind it, all sorts of things going on. I believe they are. I'm not a lawyer, but you have to deal with the laws. Yeah, so it's a bit. So you really need an expert, just almost an architect or a planner, to get it into. If it looks a bit complicated, you still need to get expert advice, don't you? Yeah.
I think for the really difficult ones you'd have, but once you have a clearly stated case in front of you and the specifics all mapped out, you have the measurements in place, it would be easier to basically look at the guidance and see how that applies to your property.
But I think what you said about going to the council and make sure it's signed that you have got PD is always a good idea, and they can't really retract on that if the regulations change later on.
As soon as it's issued, that's it, done. Because as soon as they issue that certification, you're allowed to act upon it. Once you do, it's not your fault if the rules change, really.
Absolutely. That's really good. No, it's really interesting talk. Are the slides going to be available? I mean, are you publishing those? Is it possible to get hold of those?
Well, my plan is, Paul, that I'm going to reconnect with everybody who attended today, and I'm going to send through the link to the recording so that you'll actually have the recording to review back on.
You can see the site. Yeah, no, that's really good synopsis, because I get bored reading whole acts and whatever the RIS say. Anyway, no, excellent. I'll look forward to your next talk on these things.
Thank you, Paul. Feel free to send me some questions via email if you have more.
Yeah, what's your rate? No, I like to. Are you qualified architects? Most of you who have been the speakers, are you qualified architect? Are you architects basically?
I am a project manager. I'm not an architect by profession, but I've rubbed shoulders with architects for approximately 10 years now. Working in the same office, and so I speak their language, and
speak their language. Yeah, no, interesting. I shall look forward to it. This has been great, and giving us time to have Q&A, which is always the casualty of time, isn't it? No, I'll let you crack on. Are
Thank
you
you.
going on answering other people? Because some of the stuff is interesting, or is it? Are you stopping?
Well, thank you for participating. I
Yeah.
don't see any other
Oh,
questions coming
really?
along,
How
so
boring. No, I shall look. Please email me. You've got my name. The lady who's introduced it.
yes, yes.
Yes,
Please
I have it, Paul. Yeah,
we will
no
talk
problem.
further. We will talk further on this matter. I'd love sharing with professionals who can articulate their thoughts. It's really good.
Thank
Yes.
you, Paul.
Keep building them well. Do me out of, I'm near retirement. Do me out of a job. God bless. All right. Have a good evening.
Take
Thank
care.
Thank
Have a good
you.
night.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Paul, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. I know we've run over, but there's been some really great discussion there, and I hope that's been helpful. And to those of you that are on watching today, as I say, I will be emailing you all, and I'll send a copy of the recording. So feel free to refer back to that. Obviously, there was a lot of detail to take in today. Obviously, our contact details are here as well. So if you do want to meet with Sam or Ali, and you do want to have a conversation about your own specific project, please reach out. We'd love to be able to talk to you again. As I say, this is a monthly webinar, so we will have another one in March. So we'll contact you with some information about that. But thanks again. Thanks so much for holding on a bit later than planned, and have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye.